We received an emergency alert. We can no longer leave our house. We were simply relaxing in front of the television, absent-mindedly watching the colorful images without thinking too much about their real content. That had always been our usual routine. Come home, not talk, and switch our brains. Off for the night. But that particular night, all our phones rang within a span of 15 seconds. We all jumped, confused, checking our phones at the same time. All there was a simple message, but with an absolutely clear meaning. Emergency alert. This is a message for the citizens of Milporti. Do not leave your homes. Stay inside and do not open the door to anyone, not even your own family or friends. This is not a drill. Remain indoors. Turn off the lights. Our minds began to race, but none of us was able to utter a single word. I looked at my father, who put on his glasses to make sure he had read the message correctly. My mother looked worried, her eyes full of panic. "What is this?" my father finally asked. Although the message was clear, it didn't really explain the situation. It was the first and only emergency alert we had received in our small town, apart from the occasional test messages. It was real. Something dangerous was approaching, and we had no idea what it was. I went to the window, only to see all our neighbors start turning off their lights. Within minutes, the entire neighborhood was dark, leaving us confused in a fog of ignorance. "I'm going to call the police," my father said as he dialed the number. The phone began to ring, and he put it on speaker. But instead of someone answering, he got an automated message. "We are experiencing a high volume of calls right now. Please do not hang up. You will be redirected to one of our operators shortly." "What's going on?" my mother asked. "I don't know," my father replied before falling silent. I stayed by the window, watching the empty neighborhood, imagining whether someone would defy the message and go out. Meanwhile, my father tried calling the police again. After the third attempt, he decided to call his co-worker who lived closer to downtown. "Hey David, did you get the same message we did?" my father asked. "Yeah, it's crazy. Most people are staying home, although some idiots went outside to play. They seem fine, but I don't know." "Wait, what's that?" My father waited patiently while David fell silent on the other end of the line. "I think the army is on the street, but they look strange. They're all wearing gas masks, but the masks have 3 eyes. I don't even know what kind of weapons they're carrying. Can you take a picture and send it to us?" "I'll try. Hang on a second." A few seconds passed, and another beep sounded on my father's phone, signaling we had received a photo. He opened it quickly, but what we saw was little more than a tangle of colors from an obviously corrupted photograph. "David, the photo isn't showing up. Try again." "Yeah, it's not working. The camera isn't saving the pictures properly." The phone remained silent, lighting my father's face with a pale glow. The air inside the house was dense, as if the same electricity that used to bring the lamps to life now weighed down upon us. No one dared speak. David's last word had been lost in a metallic hum that still seemed to ring in my ears. "David?" my father asked, leaning toward the speaker. Only a distorted echo answered, as if the voice came from the bottom of a cavern. Then, a dry noise, followed by silence. My mother clutched her chest, and I, unable to help it, took a step toward the window. Outside, Millport Street was motionless. The houses, so familiar by day, seemed asleep under the darkness. Then I saw it. A small white light, moving slowly among the trees. It wasn't a car's headlight. It glided too low, too slowly. "Dad," I murmured. "There's something outside." My father came closer, pushing the curtain aside slightly with his fingers. His eyes, hidden behind his glasses, reflected that light which seemed to be watching us too. Suddenly, the phone vibrated. On the screen appeared a message that didn't come from any contact. "Connection. Restricted by national security." My heart skipped a beat. My mother stepped back, murmuring a barely audible prayer. My father tried to press something, but the screen went completely dark, leaving the device inert, as if something had disconnected it from the outside. We stood there, listening. That's when I noticed it. A constant low hum, almost imperceptible, that seemed to come from the ground. It wasn't an electrical sound, but something more organic, like a collective murmur hidden beneath the earth. I held my breath for a moment, trying to make it out. It wasn't just a sound. There was a rhythm, a pattern, almost as if someone, or something, was communicating in a way we couldn't understand. My father took a flashlight from the drawer and pointed it outside. The beam swept the yard, lighting up the porch, the flower pots, the fence, and then it stopped on something. A shadow. A figure, standing still at the end of the path, right by the street. I couldn't make out its face, but I could swear it wore something shiny on its head, some kind of helmet or mask. "It must be someone from the army," my father said, though his voice didn't sound convinced. "And why isn't he moving?" I asked. No one answered. The figure remained motionless, looking toward our house, until it suddenly raised an arm and pointed something at us. A small blue flash swept through the night, and all the lights inside the house flickered at the same time. Even the candles. The flashlight went out. The television, which was unplugged, gave a brief flicker. On the screen, a blurry sentence appeared for an instant. "Remain calm. Do not look at them directly." And then, everything went black again. My mother hugged me tightly, trembling. The hum ceased, leaving a silence so pure I could hear my own heartbeat. My father looked at the phone again, but the screen was still dead. "Let's step away from the windows," he finally said in a low but firm voice. As we turned off the few remaining lights, I couldn't help but look outside one more time. The figure was no longer there. Only the white light remained, moving slowly down the empty street, as if searching for another house. And for the first time in my life, I had the feeling that something was watching not only our home, but also us, from a place much deeper than the darkness. Night fell over us again like a heavy blanket. The neighborhood's lights remained off, and the silence was so deep that any sound felt like an intrusion. My father had insisted we stay away from the windows, but I couldn't get the figure I had seen outside out of my mind. Even when I closed my eyes, its silhouette lingered there, floating in the darkness of my thoughts. My mother set some candles on the dining room table, and the flickering light drew shadows that moved slowly along the walls. She was a woman in her 40s, dark hair tied up in a messy bun, with a kind face that now showed more exhaustion than fear. My father, on the other hand, seemed to be wrestling with his own disbelief. His short graying beard made him look older than he actually was. He was around 50, with big hands marked by work, and an expression that mixed authority with confusion. I sat across from them, listening to the sounds of the house as if they were an unknown language. The creak of the wood, the whistle of the wind through the cracks, everything seemed to carry a hidden meaning. Then it happened. 3 sharp knocks sounded on the front door. They weren't loud, but they were precise. Knock. Pause. Knock. Pause. Knock. My mother let out a small cry and covered her mouth. My father raised the flashlight, but he didn't move. "It must be a neighbor," he said, though his voice trembled slightly. We waited. No one spoke. The knocks repeated, identical, with the same rhythm. I went into the hallway, led by curiosity, even though my heart beat so fast I felt my whole body vibrate with it. As I approached the door, I noticed something strange. The knocks didn't sound directly on the wood, but as if they echoed throughout the house, answering from different points at the same time. Knock, knock, knock. I backed away, feeling my skin prickle. "Dad," I whispered, "it's not just coming from outside." My father gestured for me to stay still. He walked slowly toward the door, put his ear close, and just when he thought the knocking had stopped, something vibrated in the upstairs windows. The same pattern. My mother squeezed my hand. The nearest candle flickered until it went out, and darkness covered the room again. I could hear my father opening a drawer, searching for the flashlight. When he turned it on, the beam lit the hallway. Empty. But for an instant, I could swear I saw a shadow move near the wall. So quickly I doubted. It was real. Silence returned. Thick, uncomfortable. My mother began to cry without making a sound, trying to hold back the sob. My father approached her and hugged her, trying to appear calm. "We won't open the door," he said. "Whatever it is, we won't panic." Then a new sound broke the silence. Not knocks this time, but something softer, more rhythmic. A whistle. 3 notes, repeated again and again, coming from outside. I ran to the living room window, ignoring my parents' warnings. I lifted the curtain slightly and looked out. What I saw took my breath away. In every house in the neighborhood, the lights were flickering to the same rhythm. There was no electricity, but inside the windows a bluish light filtered out, pulsing like a heartbeat. And with each flash, the whistle grew louder. My father reached me and yanked the curtain down. "Don't look anymore," he said with a mixture of fear and authority. But it was too late. That light remained etched in my mind. We spent the rest of the night without speaking, listening to the whistle slowly move away, house by house, until it finally faded completely. When silence returned, none of us dared to move. I stared at the closed door for hours, certain the knocking would return. I didn't know when, but something told me the pattern wasn't finished. Dawn arrived without warning, but no one in the house greeted it with relief. The sunlight seemed paler than usual, as if it were tired too. My mother made coffee in silence, without turning on the stove. She used a small gas burner we kept for emergencies. The familiar aroma spread through the kitchen, but it brought no comfort. My father kept checking his phone, trying in vain to get a signal. I sat by the window watching the neighborhood. The houses were still closed, curtains drawn, and the streets deserted. The boy with the bicycle, the one I had seen the night before, wasn't there. Only a heavy silence covered everything. Then my father's phone vibrated. We all froze. "What does it say?" my mother asked. My father frowned, reading aloud. "Citizens of Millport, remain indoors. Containment agents are operating." "Containment agents?" I repeated, confused. My mother looked at him, eyes wide. "Is that military?" "I don't know," he responded, sliding his finger across the screen. "There's no sender." He tried to switch to the news channels, but the television only showed a gray screen. In the center was a symbol I didn't recognize. 3 interlocked circles, like an endless chain. The TV flickered once, and the symbol disappeared, leaving the screen completely black. "It must be a government broadcast," my father said, more to convince himself than us. My mother sighed, relieved to hear his voice, though the trembling in her hands gave her away. We tried to pick up a radio station. After turning the dial again and again, a voice managed to filter through the static. "Do not go out. I repeat, do not go out. The agents are not human." The transmission cut off suddenly. A shrill beep filled the room, forcing us to cover our ears. My father turned the device off with a thump. The silence that followed was unbearable. I felt as if the whole house were holding its breath. Suddenly, a faint sound began to repeat from the television, like a digital ticking. I approached carefully. In the lower corner of the screen, some letters blinked faintly. They weren't full words, but fragments. "Don, Lou, at..." "What does that mean?" I asked. My mother answered in a thread of a voice, "Don't look at them." My father changed the channel, but they all showed the same incomplete phrase, repeating, flickering. We looked at each other, not knowing what to do. Outside, the wind began to blow hard, striking the windows as if someone were running past them. For an instant, I saw a shadow move behind the reflection of the glass, but when I blinked, it was gone. Suddenly, a metallic sound vibrated from the street. It was a motor, or so it seemed. I peeked carefully and made out a line of dark vehicles moving slowly. They had no lights, but they did have a sort of bluish gleam on their sides. Each one carried people in. Dark suits and helmets with 3 round lenses instead of 2. My father grabbed me by the shoulder and pulled me away from the window. "Don't look anymore," he said firmly. "We don't know who they are." We all stayed silent as the vehicles passed in front of our house. No one spoke. Only the murmur, of the engines could be heard, and that faint sound, as if each wheel left an electrical vibration on the ground. When they disappeared at the end of the street, the television turned itself back on. This time, the message was clear. Protocol 3 in progress. City under observation. A chill ran down my spine. We didn't know what Protocol 3 was, but the way they said it was as if we were no longer people, but something that needed to be monitored. My mother took my hand. "Everything is going to be fine," she said, but her voice sounded empty, as if she didn't believe it herself. And at that moment, I understood that we were no longer waiting for help. We were being watched. The next day dawned with no trace of the vehicles or the metallic noise from the night before. Calm seemed to return, but it wasn't true tranquility. It was the kind of silence you feel before a storm. My father decided to check the generator in the garage while my mother tried to maintain some normalcy by making breakfast with what little was left. I stayed alone in the living room, looking through the crack in the curtain. The neighborhood was still deserted. Clean streets, closed doors, not even what? The dogs were barking. Then, something caught my attention. In front of our house, standing by the curb, there was a boy. He looked to be about 9 years old, thin, with messy blonde hair and a blue jacket that was too big for him. He held a red bicycle lying on its side. He was staring at me, motionless. His expression wasn't fear or sadness, but a strange calm, almost empty. I felt the impulse to wave, but something in his gaze stopped me. He didn't blink. He remained completely still, with his hands at his sides, as if he didn't know what to do with them. "Mom," I called softly. "There's a boy outside." My mother came into the living room, drying her hands with a cloth. "A boy? Are you sure?" I nodded, but when I lifted the curtain again, he was gone. The bicycle was still in the same place, lying on the pavement, but the boy had disappeared. "He must have gone home," she said, though her tone sounded more like a wish than a certainty. My father appeared then, hands dirty with grease and a frown on his face. "The generator won't start. There's no reason for it to fail, but it's not responding. It's like it isn't receiving energy from anywhere." Suddenly we heard, something from outside, a metallic crunch, as if someone had stepped on the bicycle. I ran to the window again, but I didn't see anyone. Only the fallen toy, now a little closer to the edge of the street. My mother asked me to step away from the glass. She had always been cautious, more emotional than rational, but in that moment, her intuition was the only thing keeping us centered. Her light brown hair was now disheveled from hours without sleep, and her green eyes seemed to see more than she said. A few minutes passed. Then, the landline rang. My father was the first to react. He hesitated, before picking up the receiver. "Hello," he said, his voice firm. For a second, nobody answered, only a slow breathing on the other end. Then a child's voice, barely a whisper, spoke. "Don't look them in the eyes." My father froze. "Who are you?" he asked. But the line went dead. We all fell, silent, trying to process what we had heard. The same message, the same warning. "Don't look them in the eyes." My mother ran to the door and secured it with a double lock. My father unplugged the phone, fearing someone could track us through it. I, on the other hand, couldn't stop thinking about the boy. His voice was identical to the one on the phone. Almost an hour passed before I dared to look again. When I did, the bicycle was gone. Only 2 tire marks were left on the ground, as if someone had pushed it toward the corner. But at the end of those marks, on the pavement, something was written in white chalk, a symbol made of 3 interlocked circles. My father ran out from the garage, saw the drawing, and turned pale. "When did that appear?" "I don't know," I answered, my voice unsteady. "A few minutes ago it wasn't there." He looked at me gravely. "From now on, no one peeks. Through the windows. No matter what." That night, as I tried to sleep, I kept hearing the boy's voice in my mind, repeating the same words. Soft, constant, insistent. Don't look them in the eyes. Night fell again, wrapping the house in a silence that seemed to listen. None of us had been able to rest well since the thing with the boy. Every noise, every shadow, made us hold our breath. The phone remained unplugged and the windows covered. Only the radio was left, our last attempt to understand what was happening outside. My father, determined, turned it on. He slowly moved the dial, searching for a clear frequency among the static. For a few seconds, there was nothing but white noise. Then a voice emerged, faint, as if it were coming from very far away. "Don't trust the lights. Not all of them are human." The signal distorted, mixing with a high-pitched hum. My mother covered her ears. My father tried adjusting the antenna, but the radio seemed to come alive by itself. The knobs turned on their own, and the volume increased without anyone touching it. I watched, hypnotized. The radio's screen, an old one with a green digital display, began to flicker, showing random numbers. 3, 9, 1, 3, then silence. "Turn it off," my mother said softly. "Please." My father hesitated. He seemed unable to do it, as if something held him back. Then a new voice spoke. It wasn't the same as before. It sounded closer, more familiar. "Can you hear me?" We all looked at each other. "I know who you are," the voice continued. A chill ran down my back. It wasn't possible. That voice was mine. "Turn it off!" my mother screamed. My father did so immediately. The silence was so sudden that my heartbeat sounded like thunder in the middle of the room. We stayed motionless for a few seconds. My mother began to tremble. My father, without a word, unplugged the radio from the power. He put it inside the closet, as if that were enough to lock away what had happened. "It must have been interference," he finally said, but none of us believed it. Later, while we tried to eat something, I heard a faint click from the hallway. I got up and walked in silence, guided only by the faint light of the candles. When I reached the bathroom, I noticed something strange. The mirror was fogged up, even though we hadn't used hot water. I moved closer and, without thinking, ran my finger over the glass, writing my name, Luis. The mist covered the surface again immediately, but it didn't erase my word. Instead, beneath it another appeared, written from inside the mirror, "Run." I took a step back, not taking my eyes off it. My breathing grew short. My reflection looked back, at me with a calm that wasn't mine. It had my same features, short brown hair, light skin, dark eyes, but its expression was different, as if it knew something I didn't. "Luis?" my mother called from the kitchen. I blinked, and the word disappeared. The mirror was clean again, dry. "Nothing, Mom. It's fine," I lied, my voice trembling. I went back to the table, pretending normality. My father was speaking softly to her, planning to cover the mirror with a blanket, as a precaution. I didn't want to ask why. That night, when I tried to sleep, I heard the same low hum under the floor that I had heard days before. But this time it was accompanied by something else. My name, whispered softly, almost protectively, from somewhere inside the house. I covered my ears and closed my eyes. I didn't want to hear it, but the sound remained, beating in rhythm with my breathing. And although I refused to accept it inside, I felt we weren't alone. We hadn't been since the first alert. That night, the air felt heavier. There was something different in the darkness, as if the silence itself were watching us. The wall clock showed 2 a.m, and none of us had been able to sleep. My father remained seated by the door, the flashlight turned off across his knees while my mother hugged a blanket on the sofa. I couldn't stop thinking about the mirror. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my own reflection moving a second after me. Then a sharp sound broke the stillness. 3 knocks on the door. The 3 of us froze. "It must be the wind," my mother whispered. "But the wind doesn't knock 3 times with such precision." "I'm going to look through the peephole," my father said, standing up. I stopped him. "Don't do it." "It's okay, son. It'll just be a neighbor." He approached slowly, each step echoing on the wood. When he looked through the slit, he said nothing. His silence lasted so long my mother stood up, worried. "What do you see?" she asked. My father jerked back, pale. "It's David. He's out there." The name hung in the air like an impossible echo. David, the colleague, who had spoken to him on the phone before everything was cut off. "Are you sure?" I asked. "Yes. He has the same jacket. He's right in front of the door." My mother ran toward him. "Then open it, please. He must need help." My father hesitated. On the other side, a familiar voice sounded clearly. "It's me, David. Let me in." It was exactly his tone, his way of speaking, even his slight breathing between phrases. My father took a step toward the lock, but something in the repetition of the sentence stopped him. "It's me, David. Let me in." The voice sounded the same, without emotion, without any variation. "It's me, David. Let me in." My mother covered her mouth. "It's not him," I whispered. My father backed away slowly, while the voice continued, identical, over and over, like a recording stuck in a loop. Then, the doorknob moved by itself, very slowly. We all took a step back. The wood creaked under the pressure. "Turn off the lights," my father ordered. We were left in complete darkness, listening to the voice repeat the same words, but closer, almost whispering right up against the wood. "It's me, David. Let me in." Then silence. No one breathed for long seconds, until we heard something new. Footsteps. Slow. Walking around the house. The porch boards creaked with each step. A metallic scraping followed the sound, as if something brushed against the dining room window. My mother began to cry silently. I felt a tingling in my hands, as if the blood had frozen. Suddenly, the television turned on by itself. The screen showed static. My reflection appeared amid the gray flickers, and behind me, in the glass, I could see a figure standing at the window. Just for a second. Then it disappeared. My father rushed to the plug and yanked the cord out. The image faded. Silence returned, dense and absolute. Several minutes passed before any of us moved. Then, on the other side of the door, the same voice spoke one last time, softer, almost human. "I don't need to come in anymore." We didn't hear anything else that night. I stayed awake until dawn, watching. The first light of day slipped through the cracks in the curtain. The voice was gone, but its echo kept resonating inside me, a wordless warning I couldn't quite understand. Dawn came with a silence so pure it seemed impossible. The voice from the night before was no longer heard, but something had changed. The air inside the house had a different weight, as if every object were watching us from its place. My mother didn't let go of her coffee cup. She held it between trembling hands without taking a single sip. My father, his eyes reddened from lack of sleep, checked the locks again, and again. I went to the bathroom. I had the feeling that sleep was playing tricks on me, but I needed to check. The mirror was covered with a blanket, just as my father had ordered, but curiosity got the better of me. I lifted the edge and looked at it. My reflection looked back. It was me, of course. Messy hair, sunken eyes, pale skin, but something in that image didn't match. My lips were closed, and yet my reflection smiled. It was just an instant, an almost imperceptible curve, but enough to make my heart jump. I dropped the blanket at once, breathing hard. I stepped into the hallway. My mother looked at me without speaking. I didn't have the courage to tell her. The rest of the morning passed between silence and the sounds of the wind beating the windows. At noon, the television turned on by itself again. This time there was no static, but an aerial image of Millport. Our city, seen from above, with a gray-tone map and small red dots marking each house. I drew closer. All the dots blinked regularly, except one. "Dad, come see this." He approached, frowning. "What is that?" "Look, all the houses are marked except ours." The point where we lived was empty, a blank space, among the rest. My mother put her hand over her mouth. "What does that mean?" My father leaned closer to the television. "Maybe it's a system error, or someone protecting us." But I felt it wasn't protection, it was exclusion, as if something or someone knew that we no longer belonged on that map. Suddenly, the image changed. A series of numbers appeared in the corner of the screen, 0, 4, 7 to 3. Then, the symbol of the 3 interlocked circles. The broadcast cut off, and the TV went black. The tension was unbearable. My father stepped back, taking a deep breath. "This is no longer a coincidence," he said. "Everything is connected. The lights, the messages, the voices." "What if all this is a test?" I asked, remembering the first alerts. "Maybe they want to measure our reaction." "Who would want to do something like that?" My mother replied. No one had an answer. By mid-afternoon, the sunlight began to fade early. A golden glow covered the neighborhood, casting long, distorted shadows on the ground. I approached the window, breaking the rule. There was no one outside, but my reflection in the glass didn't move when I did. I stood staring at it, paralyzed. My breath hit the pane, forming a thin layer of mist. In it, a word appeared written from the other side. "Watched." I backed away immediately. "Dad!" I shouted. He ran to me, but when he arrived, the word had already vanished. We spent the rest of the day trying to pretend normality, but we couldn't. Every noise made us jump. Every silence made us hear things that might not be there. That night, before going to sleep, I looked at myself in the small hallway mirror. This time my reflection wasn't smiling. It just watched me, still, with a weary look that wasn't mine. And just before I blew out, the candle, I could swear I saw it blink, half a second after I did. The day dawned covered by a thick fog that erased the edges of the neighboring houses. From the window, I could barely make out the street, as if Millport had been wrapped in a dream that no one could leave. The air smelled of damp, and something metallic, as if the atmosphere were charged with electricity. My father sat at the table with his notebook open. He had been writing for hours the numbers and phrases we had seen in the messages and on TV, trying to find a pattern. His beard was starting to grow, giving him a tired but determined look. My mother, hair tied back and eyes reddened, boiled water for tea without a word. I, for my part, couldn't get the fragmented letters that had appeared on the screen out of my head. Don, Lu, at... There was something in those words. A hidden order. I took the old phone we had kept. In a drawer, turned it on, and looked for the previous messages. There they all were, one after another, identical, or almost. I sat at the table and began to read aloud, jotting down the first letters of each message. The sequence seemed random until, when combined, they formed a phrase. They are... not them. Do not go out. A chill ran through me. Dad, I said, look at this. He adjusted his glasses, read my notes, and froze. Are you sure you didn't edit this? No, that's how it was. Each message had it hidden. My mother dropped the spoon she was holding. Then, who is sending us the alerts? No one answered. Outside, the wind blew with a low murmur, almost as if someone were breathing near the walls. The radio, which had remained unplugged, gave a brief click and turned on by itself. From amid the static, a voice whispered, "Find the signal. It's inside." And it turned off. My father struck the table with his pencil, frustrated. Inside? Inside what? The house? Us? No one dared answer. We spent the next few hours looking for something, anything, a hidden transmitter, a device, some clue. We checked every room, every outlet, finding nothing. But back in the living room, I noticed a flicker on the TV's dark screen. A line of text appeared and disappeared in a second. I ran to get a piece of paper and wrote it down before I forgot it. The reflection doesn't lie. My mother covered her face with her hands. "Please, no more mirrors," she murmured. We sat in silence. My father opened his notebook again and started writing the new messages. I watched him move the pen calmly until I realized something. He was repeating the same phrase over and over without looking at us. They are not them. Do not go out. Dad, I said, coming closer. What are you doing? He didn't answer. His gaze was vacant, fixed on the page. The pen kept moving, copying the same words without pause. I touched his shoulder, and he seemed to wake from a trance. What happened? He asked, confused. I showed him the notebook. He looked at it, horrified. I don't remember writing that. At that moment, all the lights in the house flickered. The television turned itself on again, showing an image of our living room in real time. But there was an impossible detail. In the reflection of the glass behind us, there was a shadow that wasn't there. My mother jumped up and turned the TV off. No one spoke for several minutes. Only the ticking of the clock filled the room. Finally, my father broke the silence. I think someone is warning us. And it's not outside. It's somewhere among us. That night, as I tried to sleep, I heard the voice in my head again, the same one that came from the radio, repeating like a soft, persistent echo. The reflection doesn't lie. At 3 a.m, something changed. The silence became so thick it was hard to breathe. Even the wind didn't move. The electricity had died completely. No fridge hum, no cable buzz, no faint glow from the digital clock. Only the purest darkness and a calm that hurt. I got out of bed and looked down the hallway. My steps seemed to boom too loudly. From the living room, I could see my parents dozing on the sofa, the candles burned down to the nub. One of them still burned weakly, and its flame cast long shadows on the wall. Suddenly, I felt something strange underfoot, a faint, steady vibration as if the floor were breathing. I leaned down and pressed my palm to the ground. The tremor was still there, steady, like a pulse. "Dad," I whispered. He woke with a start. "What is it?" "The floor. It's shaking." My mother opened her eyes. At that moment, all the windows in the house lit up with a white, soft light, with no apparent source. It wasn't natural. It didn't come from the sky or any lamp. It was a light without a source, as if the air itself were lit. I ran to one of the windows and opened the curtain a crack. The entire neighborhood shone under that spectral light. On the horizon, a huge sphere, the size of a building, floated in the sky. Its surface seemed liquid, as if it were made of living glass that moved and breathed. "My God," my mother whispered. The sphere emitted a deep hum, so low the air vibrated in our chests. A series of smaller lights detached from it and began to descend slowly over the city, moving with precision, as if they knew exactly where to go. "Stay away from the windows," my father ordered, but I couldn't. It was too hypnotic. I saw one of those lights stop in front of our street. It hovered a few meters above the ground, turning slowly, and each time it did, it cast shadows that didn't match its direction. Shadows that moved on their own, as if independent from the light source. Then all the lights went out at the same time. An instant later, the sphere in the sky also vanished. There was no noise, no explosion, no transition, just absolute darkness. My mother grabbed my arm, trembling. "What's happening?" she asked. My father didn't answer. He walked to the door and touched it with his palm. "It's hot," he said. A second later, the television turned on by itself, even though there was no electricity. The screen showed a black background with white letters changing quickly, as if someone were typing them at that very moment. "Protocol completed. Final observation in progress." The message disappeared and was replaced by another, "Do not fear. The process is necessary." My mother started to cry silently. I stood watching the screen, waiting for something else, and it came. The image changed, and for the first time, I saw our own living room in real time, recorded from a high angle, as if there were a camera on the ceiling. We were watching ourselves. "Turn it off," I said. My father tried to unplug the cable, but there was no cable connected. Suddenly, the image slowly zoomed in on my face. I felt a knot in my stomach. On the screen, my reflection looked at me and smiled. "Dad," I said, my voice cracking. "That isn't me." And before he could answer, the screen went dark. The silence returned, but it wasn't the same. It was a silence that breathed with us, a silence that seemed to be waiting for something. My father hugged us and spoke calmly, though his voice trembled. "Son, whatever happens, don't open that door." I nodded. I knew the end was near, although I didn't understand what kind. I woke up to warm light filtering through the slats of the curtain. For a moment, I thought I had dreamed it all. The lights, the sphere, the messages. The silence was still there, but now it was a different silence, peaceful, full of fresh air. The clock read 8 in the morning. My father slept in the armchair, arms crossed, head against the wall. My mother lay on the floor covered with a blanket. I got up slowly. The phone vibrated again for the first time in days. On the screen appeared a simple notification with no sender and no icon. "End of protocol. Thank you for your cooperation." For some reason, those words made me tremble. I didn't know whether they should reassure me or frighten me. I slid the curtain aside carefully and looked outside. The sun shone as always. The sky was blue, with no trace of that luminous sphere. The trees swayed gently in the wind. Everything seemed normal. "Dad, Mom," I whispered. "The sun's up." They woke slowly, confused, looking at each other. My father stood with difficulty. "Is it over?" he asked. I showed him the screen. He read the message and nodded, saying nothing else. We went out onto the porch. The fresh air hit my face, and I breathed deeply for the first time in a long while. The streets were clean, quiet, but not completely empty. Some doors were opening in the distance, and neighbors poked their heads out, as bewildered as we. were. The boy's bicycle was still in front of the house, leaning against the curb, but there was no sign of him, only a folded piece of paper on the seat. I approached, opened it, and read, "Do not look at them directly." A chill ran down my back. My mother came closer, took my hand, and squeezed. "It's over now, son," she said with a weak smile. "It's all over." We walked a few steps down the street. At first glance, everything looked the same, but something was different. On the front of every house, a symbol had been painted in fresh white paint. 3 interlocked circles, the same as, we had seen on television. My father stopped in front of one of the walls and touched it with his fingertips. This wasn't here before. He looked around, as if searching for a camera, a mark, something to explain what had happened. The wind blew, and for an instant, the sun's reflection on the windows made me squint. When I opened my eyes, I saw my own reflection in the glass of the car parked in front of the house. It looked back at me, just like always, except for one detail. It was smiling. Not a wide or threatening smile, but a small curve, almost human, yet foreign. And the most disturbing part wasn't the smile, but that it did it before I did. I took a step back without looking away. The smile slowly disappeared, replaced by a serene expression. My mother didn't notice anything. She kept looking at the sky, grateful that everything seemed to return to normal. But I knew something hadn't ended. Maybe the protocol had concluded, but whatever had started it was still there, watching. That night, when I tried to sleep, the silence returned. There were no hums, no lights, no messages, only the far-off sound of the wind. I closed my eyes with the strange feeling that the calm was too perfect, too rehearsed. And just before I fell asleep, the phone vibrated one last time. On the screen, a single sentence: Phase 2 confirmed.